Is Zeke Nnaji ready to take the next step forward in his development, both as a player and what the Nuggets need? And are those two things in sync? Plus, let's talk about EuroBasket and what it means for the Nuggets. And we'll also get into a little bit of, can the Nuggets win games where they don't get to play their style? All this and more on Locked On Nuggets.
You are Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast, part of the Locked On Network, your team every day. Thanks for joining us, making this your first listen each and every day. We're glad to have you with us on all platforms, including YouTube, where you can join the show and chat with Adam and I live during the program. So much stuff to get to today as the offseason rolls along. EuroBasket begins tomorrow for Nikola Jokic and Serbia, so we'll see what we have in store. On today's show, we will talk about Zeke Nnaji, who I want to talk a little bit about after I heard some stuff. Want to talk about EuroBasket and get Adam's thoughts on what this might mean for the Nuggets in terms of how EuroBasket is going to play out and what it says or does not say about various things with the Nuggets. And also, I have a question for Adam about how versatile exactly the Nuggets are going to be. My name is Matt Moore. I'm the senior NBA writer for the Action Network, joined by my colleague Adam Mares from DMVR. Adam, how's it going, man?
It's going great.
You're back in the office already.
Back in the office, back in the grind. Feels good, though. I'm excited. I feel like basketball's here. When I talk to people that are not, following the international competitions or whatever, if people are like, okay, preseason end of the month, I'm like, no, basketball's here. We're in. Black Chanchar is playing at this very moment, man. I don't know if you know about that.
That's exciting for Vlatko. All right, so let's go ahead and I want to talk about some stuff with Zeke Nnaji. So, you've heard from some of the same people, but I did want to just go ahead and comment on this. Zeke has looked awesome in workouts. So to kind of like go backwards a little bit, Zeke, when the Nuggets kind of reshaped their roster this offseason, Zeke was a name that came up consistently. Now, he came up last year as well, right? There was a lot of talk about, like, we really like Zeke Nnaji, we really believe in Zeke Nnaji, we think Zeke Nnaji can do good things for the Nuggets. And then he struggled in Summer League. It was obvious his confidence was kind of shook. Came into the season, you could tell that he was just a little bit timid. Got some playing time and started hitting shots.
Hold on, I want to go back because I want to be right about this. When you say he came into the season and was a little timid, what do you mean?
I thought that he looked like a player that did not know exactly what his role was, or
is this preseason you're talking about?
Early season, like when he would get like scant minutes early on in the season.
Okay.
Like preseason, I thought he looked kind of shaky, and then early regular season, whenever like he wasn't getting a lot of minutes, but like a lot of this was tied. Like we heard stuff about this, right? So I think from that perspective, I my takeaway was that he had some confidence issues last year, and we've kind of talked about it before. Are we in agreement on that?
I don't remember, and I'm not saying you're wrong. I just don't remember anything noteworthy in the early part of the season, so I don't remember that aspect of it. But I mean, the summer league was as bad as you could possibly have been, so right. I know there was like no momentum going into the year.
Right. He starts hitting threes and earns more playing time, and then he suffers an injury, and he comes back and he hits threes, and then he suffers an injury, and he was in and out the rest of the year, and so it was kind of hard to get like a sense of what was going on. And then in the offseason, they had DeAndre Jordan, but when I kind of inquired about that, there was kind of this talk of like what I heard, and I would say that there's various thoughts on this, that there was some confidence of like, look, Jeff Green and Zeke Nnaji are going to be our backup bigs, and then DeAndre Jordan will fill in whatever minutes are left over. I don't know if that's going to be the plan, because I will say I didn't hear that from the coaching staff. And so if the coaching staff is like, no, we have DeAndre Jordan, we're going to play DeAndre Jordan, he's a vet. Like, that's what we're going to do. That's kind of what I think might happen once camp gets here. But the question is look, I think like Zeke's shooting is awesome. He has been a premier shooter, and that's really valuable. I don't want to discount that or throw it away. I think for what the Nuggets need, though, they need a 4 or a 5. Like, I asked Zeke last preseason what he thought his role was on media day, I asked him, and he was like, "I think I'm a 3," and I thought that was really notable. I was like, "Oh," because
he said a 3, huh? That's crazy.
Yeah, he said he was a wing. So
I wonder if that has as much to do with like looking around, like there's no 3s on this roster. That's where I could play. I don't know. I just don't see him as a 3. It'd be hard for me to imagine him sincerely believing he's a 3. I think he can play 3.
He definitely said he was a wing.
Yeah.
Can you be a 4 as a wing?
Yeah, I think in today's NBA,
I don't. Probably.
But you wouldn't have said that though. You would have said a forward, whatever.
Yeah, and I mean the idea has kind of been. I think the compromise between all angles is probably that he is a power forward. Like he is a power forward, and that's probably his best role. It allows him to space the floor. Yeah. But in order to do that, he is gonna have to be able to do some of the big stuff. He's gonna have to be able to screen. He's gonna have to be able to, most especially, this is a big thing. He's got to be able to rebound. Like consistently. And even honestly, I'm not even talking about the numbers. I'm not even talking about like being able to get X amount of rebounds at him. I'm talking about needs to be able to, if it's like, hey, we need you to put a body on this guy. Got to at least be able to like hang in there. My understanding is that he's put a lot of work in the body and that he's there. It's muscle watch season, so weight's up. Sounds like he's put on some weight, but it's all muscle because he's down on body fat. Like, he's in absolutely great shape, and he's still hitting the 3s. That will allow him, I think, to play 4 very, very well. I still kind of get to this question of, do the Nuggets need him to play 5 or not? I don't know if they know that question. Like, I don't know if they're like, I don't know if they're like, we need you to play 5. Or if they're like, well, we'll see, and, like, maybe he plays 4, and we'll just kind of figure... This is where the Jordan thing comes back at him, is like, look, Zeke's best is a 4. Great. Awesome. Fantastic. Great shooter. I think that's a good role for him. But that means DeAndre Jordan's your backup 5. That means you're dealing with 15 minutes of DeAndre Jordan a game. There's no way you're getting around it. You can't have Jeff Green playing 5. Can't do it.
Why? Brooklyn did.
I think he's a little older. I think he aged into being a small ball 5 and then now is kind of aging out of it because the athleticism is going. Does that make sense?
I mean, he had a career year of dunks last year. I just don't know if here's what I would say. I don't like, is Jeff Green the center on offense and Zeke Nnaji the center on defense? Is that the way this would shake out? It might be. I don't know. Right. Because Zeke's not really a rim roller, to your point. So I don't know. It's weird. The bottom line is it's weird. If you're saying that, yes, that DeAndre Jordan's going to play center, to me, that's very concerning. So if you're not saying that, then there is either just no center, you're doing this hybrid model, or one of those guys is going to be like guarding centers every single time. And I think you're right. I think what you said was right. I don't think the Nuggets know. I certainly don't know how that's going to go.
I think we saw last year with the bench unit, somebody's got to be able to roll to the rim. I mean, is that wrong? Like, am I wrong? Like, can they, with Bones instead of Campazzo and Bruce Brown instead of Austin Rivers and Bryn Forbes and whoever else, can they make because I was generally like optimistic about the Dos Verdes lineup last year and being like, yeah, they'll make it work. It's fine. Lots of teams do this. Like, that's really been the Nuggets thinking, is like, how many teams really have these 5s
right
on the bench, especially. Right? And like, it is matchup specific. Like, if you're playing Brooklyn, you can put Zeke Nnaji out there versus Nick Claxton. That's not a problem. It's not an issue. I think you can put Zeke Nnaji out there versus Jared Allen. Jared Allen's not going to post you up, right?
He'll grab a lot of rebounds, though.
He'll grab a lot of rebounds, right? Which is why the rebounding matters. Like, these are the type of questions I think that you have to kind of tackle when you look at these things. Like, I don't know if this is an issue or not, but to me, when I look at the roster, the only question I have in a 10-man lineup is who's the backup center, and can you survive those minutes?
I agree. It's the only question. And Zeke, your earlier point, you started with this by saying that he's put on a lot of weight. I mean, you could just see that in the photos that he looks bulked up. He looks bigger. There are reports that he's added. I can't remember do you know the number weight of what it was that it's reported he had added? Let me see if I check here. I just know he's put on some weight. So, and the thing about Zeke that's interesting is I didn't think he was small last year. It might have been just like weak just because he's young and like, you add strength even if you're not adding muscle, body weight or whatever. But to me, the thing that's interesting about this. And I could be wrong. Zeke's scheme is the hardest of everybody on the team to kind of really wrap your head around because we haven't seen it consistently enough. But he was so mobile, and that was the part of his game that's so enticing, is that he's as big as he is, but he can move his feet out on the perimeter. When you add weight, does that make it more difficult? Is he going to be as effective there? And then the second question is the reason he wasn't necessarily an elite rebounder and an elite interior defender were they all related to body mass, body weight? And I don't know if that's the case either. Like, does just adding weight make you a better rebounder? Maybe just being more of an aggressive personality makes you a better rebounder. So those are the two questions I have. Did he get slower on the perimeter because of this weight gain? And is this the thing that's going to make him a more dominant inside player? I don't know if we know the answer to either of those, but he clearly believes those to be the thing. The team clearly believes those to be the case. So we'll have to wait and see.
It's always this trade-off, right? It's like, well, he needs to have weight. Okay, but if you have weight, you lose mobility.
Right.
Like, even if you just bulk, like we saw this with Gary Harris, right? Like, he bulked up, like he added a lot of muscle to be able to try and withstand stuff, but it made him, I thought, less explosive and slippery. Like, there's always these kind of like trade-offs because there's just still very few LeBrons in the world.
And by the way, Jokic, I think, is as skinny as I've ever seen him, and I think he's as strong as we've ever seen him. So it's like this weird thing where mass doesn't always equal strength. Like, sometimes it's just aging. You know, your body gets stronger naturally, and getting in the gym and these different things. So we'll see. Also, it should be noted, a lot of basketball players come in a little bit heavier, especially big men come in a little bit heavier because the grind of the season is so long that you're going to lose like 5-10 pounds just naturally over the course of the season.
Right. All right, let's take a break. We'll come back and we'll talk a little bit about EuroBasket and what it means for the Nuggets. We'll do that when we come back on Locked On Nuggets. But first, I want to tell you about BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all your pro and college football betting needs and sports info this season. Find all the latest football developments, game matchups, news, and podcasts, including this week's opening week games. BetOnline is also your continued source for all your sports wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. I have bet on the Denver Broncos. Actually, I bet on the Denver Broncos to miss the playoffs. The fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite sports and events, including MLB, MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. Bet online, where the game starts. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us.
I forgot that this is the time of year where we start to get 1-star reviews. I forgot about that.
Yeah, this is
we did so good. We had a couple. I don't know if you saw. We had a couple 5-star reviews there over the last 8 months. It was kind of nice to see.
Yeah, it was a good run, and now it's over. Back here on Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us, making us part of your day, your first listen every day. Joining folks like Jeff Morton, who's hanging out in the chat. King of Thornton. Snail's in here. Jay's in here. Coupon user has a really good thought on Zeke as a small ball center and how out of Arizona his impact and transition is big, all these type of things. Lots of great comments in the comment section as people are all watching EuroBasket because Vlatko Cancar is, as we record this, currently playing in a game. So I find myself intimidated and overwhelmed by EuroBasket. And the reason I say that is like the season ends in June and I've got the draft and then I spend 2 weeks on free agency and doing Summer League and all that. And then from like mid-July through the end of August is essentially the one time of year that I have like a slow season where there's nothing really going on. And so I tend to be like, that's when I go on vacation and try and relax and get away from basketball for a little bit. And like I did work, I've started work on various teams, but like my season prep work takes a lot. Like I have to go back and watch all the teams that I stopped watching because I was like, this team is terrible. So I have to go back and catch up on all that. And there's a lot of work to do. And so I also feel like it's not good for me to try and be like, I'm going to learn about EuroBasket just because if I try and comment on it, I feel like I'm just going to represent myself as somebody whose information is incomplete. So like, there's a lot of questions. I think
that's like inevitable though.
I think that there's a lot. Yeah. And it's okay to be wrong about stuff. I think it's an interesting question.
Okay to only have a perspective on something is kind of what I'm getting at, Matt. It's not even about being wrong. It's that your perspective might be incomplete, but you're also bringing things to the table that people with a more complete perspective won't be able to. So it's just part of the conversation.
So you having just gotten back from Serbia and having learned a lot about Serbian basketball more than if I told you like 10 years ago you were going to learn, I don't think you ever would have guessed that you have learned so much about Serbian basketball. I am curious as to what you think EuroBasket means in terms of the Nuggets for Vlatko Cancar and Nikola, what it means in terms of Obviously, it means a lot for those involved in the tournament itself, for the countries involved. But I did kind of want to get your like a general thoughts as EuroBasket tips off about how it interlaces with the Nuggets season and what you think Serbia's outcomes can mean for Denver.
Well, I really want to get your perspective on this. Eventually, I've given this in various platforms last week or so. I will kind of give a condensed version here on a couple fronts. One is that I do think there's something to Jokic in particular being in a position with the Serbian team where he's so clearly the best player and where he has a sort of leadership obligation that he's similar has maybe even more and in a more condensed form. It's almost like he's going to have to go through a whole NBA season in 2 weeks with the Serbian team and go through all of the little lists that he's going to have to go through with the Nuggets. So I kind of like it as a tune-up. I also like it as he looks like he's in incredible shape. Like he's going to hit the season this year. I think this is going to be true for most of the EuroBasket players. I don't know how they're going to look in April. Like that's the real question. April, May, June, we'll see how much stamina they have because it's a long. But I think they are going to absolutely dominate the early portion of the season because I'm watching these Rico Hines runs on Twitter. I'm watching these like workouts of guys going half speed in these pickup games, and then I'm watching EuroBasket and the World Cup qualifiers where guys are going 100% full speed with game plans and strategies. And I'm like, yeah, these are not comparable. Guys like Luka, Giannis, Jokic, and all of the other role players that are out there, in my opinion, are going to hit the ground running a lot better than all these other guys. We'll just see if they run out of gas halfway through the season.
Yeah, I think Luka, this is going to help because his entire problem has been slow starts based off of conditioning. So it's like this is perfect for him to basically be in shape and then roll right into the season. Like this, I think this is ideal. He's younger. He has fewer miles on him, all these types of things. I have some worries about Giannis and Nikola. I just do. And that's based off of histories of these players, how much I've heard teams and executives talk about it before, where they're like, he was really tired coming in because it's like he played. And somebody mentioned to me that it wasn't just, it was the travel as well. It was like all being involved in like over there, and then you didn't have the time to come back over. It's like you come back over immediately and you're basically just trying to jump in, all these types of things.
Well, I wouldn't be surprised, Matt, if they hold Jokic out of training camp.
Yeah.
Like the first few days he just doesn't participate. I wouldn't be surprised at all. I expect it.
Right. And that's kind of like the question here is like Nikola should be in like prime shape to go out there and dominate immediately. The question is going to be is he going to be out of sync with the team? Now, he was late to get in last year, I feel like, and that didn't really cause any problems. Like he held out of training camp and they still they got to a relatively slow start, but there was a lot of reasons for that, mostly the bench. Right, so if those things aren't as much of a problem, then maybe it won't be an issue.
I think he skipped last year, by the way, because of the birth of his daughter.
That's right.
That's what it was. So.
That's right. It was the birth of his daughter. Thank you for reminding me of that. So a little bit of a different situation, but still, I have mostly this is also built off of stuff like Drew Holiday and Chris Middleton, who played in the Olympics last year, and then came into camp, and then by November they both missed a lot of November. I don't know how to connect that to Middleton suffering the MCL injury. It feels very specious to just go ahead and be like, what happened? It's just a matter of there is always kind of this concern of putting more fatigue on you versus how important rest is. But I will say, because it's gotten back to a normal offseason, it does feel like everybody's playing more basketball. Like LeBron's playing in the open runs.
Thing, man. I think these things I honestly have swung so far the other way on a lot of this load management and some of this stuff. Like guys still get injured at a ridiculous rate, and we're doing load management more than ever before.
Right.
I do think there's a fatigue factor. There's no question. Every player talks about that with an 82-game season, let alone tacking an extra month onto the front of that. So there's no question that there's a mental and physical fatigue risk. But to be honest, I'm not too concerned with it. I think the good that a player like Jokic in particular gets out of this experience, and by the way, he's playing for a legendary coach and Coach Pešić. So I think there's just more to be gained from this experience, especially if Team Serbia does well. Imagine for a second, I have to set the stage for you. This is one of the things I've been talking about. EuroBasket's a big deal. Some of the Serbian national teams and Yugoslavian national teams, some of their biggest achievements, when you ask Serbian players about the greatest moments in basketball, they're EuroBasket specific events. I think there would be a confidence boost Jokic can get, believe it or not, even though he's at the top of his game and everything else, I think there's a confidence boost you get from succeeding in this that I don't think is fully understood or appreciated by people that don't live in Serbia or haven't been fortunate enough to have an experience like the one I had. That there's a real, like, everyone's behind you once you bring home a gold.
This is just the way I'm wired. Part of me like worries that he's just gonna miss do this, and the reason I say that is like you don't have all the NBA nonsense here. Like everybody's united and everybody's playing for team and everybody's playing for country, and there's a
and nobody's
camaraderie.
bothering you. I'm telling you, he didn't even do media after that game the other day. Like,
right.
Just left.
I don't know. I think he's managed it well enough now. It's like he does the 15 minutes of media after. Not even that. It's like 10 minutes of media after. He doesn't do a lot of one-on-ones. Like, his requirements are lower now.
And by the way, Matt, on that same point, we always talk about LeBron, how hard it would be to be LeBron. Like, as a person, I'm saying, because he's just so famous and everywhere he goes. We saw Jokic at the airport. He is actually flying commercially to Istanbul, which I thought was absolutely hilarious. But the whole team was. But, like, he was mobbed in there as if he were LeBron James. And it was the first time I've ever seen that, because I don't see Jokic out and about on the street.
Sure.
I just don't see him. So it was the first time I'd kind of seen him as this public figure where he couldn't go 3 steps without somebody running over to hand him the baby so they could take a picture or lean down to take a selfie. And I was very impressed with him. He, like, handled it like a superstar, where it was just like, yeah, this is my life. This is what I do when I'm in public.
Yeah, there's been a lot of growth there. It's crazy to have seen him where he started to now. That's like, it's one of the cool things I think about covering a guy's entire career is to watch him go for like that whole progression. I think is a cool part of it.
I don't understand what this is. Somebody says, please don't carry water for Cronkies and their cheapness. I don't know what we're talking about. He's flying commercially for Team Serbia. That he's not flying commercially because the Cronkies. He's flying it because Team Serbia flies on Air Serbia. On like just a regular A320, so I don't know.
Maybe it's about the I don't know. Maybe it's about the practice facility, which
did we mention that?
Not yet, but I mentioned it on Twitter, so maybe we'll get to it another day. Let's go ahead and take a break, and we'll come back. And I have a question for Adam as it relates to this upcoming Nuggets season and the question of styles make fights. We'll do that when we come back on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets, thanks for joining us, making us part of your day and your first listen every day. Glad to have you with us. We are going to talk about, I do want to talk about the practice facility thing probably tomorrow. That's the thing I want to talk about. So we'll talk about the practice facility. And by that, I mean, if Adam's wondering what the hell I'm talking about, the Magic just debuted their brand new state-of-the-art, gorgeous practice facility. Just, if the Orlando Magic have one, you need to have one. That's a good bar for everyone in the league. If the Orlando Magic have it, you should have it. That's a thing that just should be happening. All right. I have a question for Adam as it relates to this, because I was thinking about this yesterday. The Nuggets are going to be great when they do what they do. When they're able to run Jokic ball or the pick and roll with Jamal Murray, and they have all this depth and they have all this versatility, and the defense should be improved and all these types of things. I am curious, because one of the things I think is a strength for great teams is the ability to win when things don't go right. So when things get clogged up, like last year, if Jokic had a bad game, they were not always, but they were almost always sunk because they were so dependent on him because of the injuries and everything else. This is a more talented team. I guess my question for you is, if a team is able to speed them up, which they want to play slow because that's where they're best, if a team is able to speed them up, can the Nuggets win? If the shots aren't falling and the Nuggets need to win a grinded out type of game next year with the personnel that they have now, can they win? How adaptable to victory do you think this Denver Nuggets team is?
The question almost, I think, disguises the answer. And the reason is because no team has ever sped them up. That's part of what makes Jokic so great, is he can avoid being sped up. Even against the Warriors, that wasn't the case. The Warriors speed everybody up, and even they couldn't speed them up. So the answer is, can they if they get sped up? Part of me thinks Denver would be better if they played a little bit faster. So we'll see. But to your point, I don't know. I do think Denver, they're good at controlling their pace, and that's probably their comfort zone for against these good teams. So could they? I don't know. The versatility of winning part, though, is just one of the more interesting questions to the Nuggets for me, because we know they can win with the Jamal Murray-Jokic two-man game. They know they can win when the ball gets popping, although getting the ball popping is a challenge, it seems, more so than teams like the Golden State Warriors, the 2014 Spurs, the teams that have relied on ball movement the way Denver does, but have won at the highest level. But the third piece of this is that, in my opinion, they're probably going to have to find out a way to win with Michael Porter. He's a good enough talent, and he provides a good enough counterpunch to the things that they do so well that if that becomes another way for them to win, it probably means 1 or 2 extra playoff wins. And 1 or 2 extra playoff wins at the right spot is the difference between winning a championship or not. So to me, they have some versatility, and I think they're really good at not being taken out of the things that they do really well. But I do think this year is a lot about finding out, where does Michael Porter fit into this, and can he fit in a way that gives them a whole new way of beating you.
Which is interesting because last year we said that he was the most like pivotal and important player, and it was all about like figuring out the MPJ stuff last year, and then that all went sideways because of the injury. And now it's like that question's been kind of reframed. But I do agree with you. I do agree with you in that there's a lot of games in the NBA, in the regular season in particular, and in the playoffs to a certain extent, where it's like, look, things don't go according to script for either team, right? Yeah. It's like this team wanted to slow it down and play slow. Well, they couldn't get stops, so they started running a little bit more. Or this team's, last year, a lot of the problem again was I didn't feel like there were. How many games do you feel like Aaron Gordon played the best that night? Not was the best player on the floor, because it was always Nikola, but how many games do you feel like Aaron was like played the best of any Nugget last year?
By his nature, he's not going to pop up very often in that conversation, right, because the things that he does well don't always pop or shine in a way where you're like, we do this with Game Ball over at DNVR, where we award the like king of the game, and it's hard to give it to anybody other than Jokic. And when somebody else gets it, it's like Bones or Michael Porter or Jamal, because they scored a bunch. Aaron Gordon, it's like, hey, he had a bunch of nice defensive possessions.
Right.
Hard to quantify, hard to like reward.
But I think by the very nature of having more options, that there can be more opportunities for that. Like there's such a disbursement of talent now, and those talents help each other, where it's like Nicole is always going to be the best player on the floor, but there can be nights where it's like, MPJ, like honestly they didn't play that well, but MPJ went off. You know what, they didn't play that well, but Jamal had 35. They didn't play that well, but Bruce Brown came in and gave him like a triple-double, and that was really big. They have way more, their paths to winning I think are a lot wider, not in terms of maybe the style standpoint, because I think that we've kind of answered the question. I think they will always gravitate back to their style, but that when it's a weird game and it's just a funky, weird game, they have more paths to victory because they have more guys that can step up and have that wasn't everything that they wanted to do, but they got the win because of X. And that you really need that in the course of the regular season. That variance, I think, is really important.
I think I agree with you on this one. We disagree on this, but I think this is when I disagree. Or I agree with you. They need to find some versatility. It's one of the things that you really hate about Michael Porter missing so much of last year, and we'll see how it works out. Bones Highland, though, is going to be another piece of this. He's another way to win differently that the Nuggets haven't had before.
Yeah. And Coupon user notes that Bones does play really fast too. It's true. Some people were mentioning there are guys that can play really fast. I think Bruce Brown's really good in transition. I think KCP will do a very good job spotting up. I think that there are guys that can run effectively on this team. So especially depending on what the lineup is. And hey, you've always got the Jokic outlet passes too. So maybe they can run a little bit more next season. Let's go wrap it up for Locked On Nuggets for today. We'll be back tomorrow. We'll probably do a show we'll touch on a number of things, and we'll preview the game. We'll see if we get time
tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we'll see if we have time to do a post-game show after the Serbia game as well, just to touch on how Nikola played. We'll talk about all that and more as the week rolls along, as EuroBasket begins. Thanks for joining us on Locked On Nuggets.